Thanks for tuning in. I'm Andy Zopp, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0. At the roundtable this week, we'll take a closer look at the continuing challenges the city and the mayor are experiencing in the form of a downgraded bond rating and the impending exit of a major drugstore chain from some of the city's most underserved communities. I'll also sit one-on-one with the CEO and president of Ignite, an organization providing critical supports and services to Chicago's homeless youth. We'll get started on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Robin Robinson, inviting you to tune in to the new CAN TV original program, In Other News. Each week, I will break down newsworthy topics that traditional outlets may ignore, grounded in truth, fun, and blackness, from the trap house to the White House, with the big house in between. Join the conversation on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Hyper-local news and critical analysis. Experience the power of community television.
Tonight, we turn our attention to three major stories shaping Chicago's economic and community landscape. The city's bond rating has been downgraded, raising concerns about Chicago's financial future and its ability to fund critical services. Meanwhile, Walgreens has announced the closure of 5 stores on the south and west sides, sparking outrage in communities already grappling with limited access to essential goods. I'm joined at the roundtable by City Bureau Executive Director Morgan Malone, Latino News Network publisher Hugo Balta, Cook County Commission on Human Rights Chair Sufyan Sohel, and making her first appearance on the Newsroom, journalist and adjunct professor at Chicago State University, Adrienne Samuels Gibbs. So let's get started. We'll start with the lowered bond rating. Just for listeners, Hugo, can you talk a little bit about why it matters? Like, why should anybody care about the bond rating? What's the impact?
Well, it matters just like when we take out a loan, right, and or a credit card. If we have a bad credit, we're going to pay more on interest on money that we're borrowing. So for the city, that means millions and millions of dollars. But this was bound to happen, especially after the circus that it was just to get to a budget approval almost at the last minute, late in December. So I think the mayor having a brouhaha over the bond rating is very performance driven. I think what he needs to focus on is doing what he said, that the city has a lot of good stories to tell in regards to economic development. So walk the walk during this year and don't get yourself in the same situation you got yourself last year in the back and forth in December about a budget. Start having those conversations early during the summer, as we said previously on this program, and that bond rating will go back up again.
What do you think? Is this something we should be worried about? Should we care? Should we just let the mayor keep doing what he's been, not keep doing what he's doing, but be supportive and not worried about our finances?
Okay, so is it a canary in a coal mine? Perhaps, perhaps not. What I am really interested in, though, is how long it took us to get here. Many cities throughout history often get lowered bond ratings. Do the cities fail? No. And sometimes when cities have like AAA, when they have AA, AAA, sometimes that means they're just in a period of growth. Chicago's a really old city, and I think that we are just going through that ebb and that flow of these kinds of things that happen. Does it mean that the mayor is doing a terrible job? I don't think so. I think that the people that choose to dislike the mayor will choose to dislike him. The people that like the mayor will choose to like him. But ultimately, the city does, I agree, the city just needs to focus on whatever we can do economically, but also dealing with the budget, because there's still not enough money. And the taxes that they're implementing now, and I also read about the new 40 or 50 new red light cameras are going in. If aldermen agree, is that going to bring us the $1 billion that we need? I don't know. I actually suspect Chicagoans will slow down. And so if
Not in my neighborhood so far, I'm just saying. So, they are making a lot of money off the red light cameras in my hood. Just, I'm kidding. But.
I mean, I just wonder, if these measures don't work to bring in some extra money for the budget, what will happen?
It doesn't seem like the best stable source. But the mayor says, look, you're focusing on our challenges, not the strengths. Is there some there in what he's saying, or is that more political speak?
there may be some there. And at the same time, when it comes to municipal finance, this is a huge deal. Like, I can't overlook the fact that the bond rating does really matter. You know, ultimately, what's concerning to me is that, yes, you're right, that there's all these build-up actions prior to that would make us get to this point. And the things that happen prior to are nothing to sneeze at, and we don't have a solution for them. We don't have a solution for pensions, and they're only growing. The average municipal employee and any government worker is actually over 60 and ready for retirement right now at every jurisdictional level of government. And so a mass exodus from the city or the county or the state means that we're going to have to pay those tier 1 pensions, which are about 90% of your highest salary. And so those are the things where I'm just kind of like, I don't see an end in sight, and the revenue generation isn't great. And so if the bond rating is down, and that's our savior, that's what we have to fall back on as debt, and then we can't get debt, or the debt is just too expensive and it continues to dig us into a deeper hole, we don't have a pathway to get out of this hole that's actually viable. And even the progressive revenue items that are being floated are really short-term versus long-term. And so I'm just not sure that we have a good strategy right now. And I appreciate that, you know, there's political speak, but I care about the money.
Yeah. Sufyan, there was a group of aldermen during the budget crisis that really were pushing the city to reduce expenses, to focus on expense reduction. Is that a viable, at least a part of a viable strategy that he's not focusing on, do you think?
I think so. I think, you know, when you look at budgets, you also not only have to bring in more revenue, but how do we cut expenses also to balance it out? But, you know, I think just piggybacking a little bit on Morgan, I think what she was saying, the challenges that the city's experiencing on his leadership, they feel like they're compounding on one another. And it seems, I think perception is that he's digging a deeper and deeper and deeper hole rather than trying to find ways out of it through collaboration and partnership. And yeah, we can cut some expenses, but that won't solve the whole problem.
Right.
He didn't create our financial mess, but no matter whether it's him or another mayor after him, or he continues, it's still going to be extremely hard for anyone.
Yeah, it is. Agreed. And I think to everybody's point here, we got to figure out some better pathways, both to revenue, but also to expense reduction, because it's not sustainable. So speaking of entities that have had some problems with building a sustainable business, our friends at Walgreens are really challenged right now, and they're doing what businesses do when they're really challenged. They're cutting expenses. Unfortunately, that's having a real impact in communities we care about. You know, what are you hearing, and is there anything that can be done when a store like Walgreens says, hey, you know, Chicago's south and west sides, communities where you really are needed, we're out?
Okay, so can anything really be done here? With Walgreens? Likely not. Although, I would like to point out that I did giggle when I read the story in Fortune about the reason, about the investor call, where a representative from Walgreens said, you know, locking up all the items didn't work out for us because items didn't sell.
Right.
Well, I posit that what is happening in some of these so-called low-performing stores is that items did not sell because you had to wait too long to get your paper towels or your lotion or your diaper or whatever it was that they chose to lock up. And now they're going to blame the community for being low-performing. I think that's terrible and awful, but I also think that what can communities do? Well, you know, first the aldermen in the city are going to have to do something about zoning. They're going to do something to bring different businesses in. But I also think in the short term, if people are worried about pharmacy, there are a lot of small pharmacies, compound pharmacies, online pharmacies. I really like Amar Pharmacy that's in the suburbs here. They get you your stuff, they bring it to your house. Once I discovered Amar, I don't really see a reason to go to Walgreens anyway.
Right.
And so maybe perhaps the city could help some of the seniors who may need help with online.
Right, that's a great suggestion. I'm going to come back to that. Hugo, what do you say to, you know, not just to Walgreens, but about the fact that, you know, they made it so hard to get stuff, right? You kind of feel like a criminal when you walk in the store. You got to go get somebody just to get some lotion, right? You're not talking about like the high-end stuff. You're talking about to get a bottle of lotion. I mean, at some point, that just, who wants to go through that experience?
Sure, and I agree with you 100%. I think too often the most vulnerable are blamed for decisions that are being made by the C-suite leadership. So the first thing is the city needs to invest in small businesses, right? The mom and pops that are part of the community, instead of always going for the carrot with these big companies. This is not the first time. We've seen this with big grocery store chains as well. They come in because they get a lot of cuts from the city to build, and then as soon as things don't go their way economically, the easy thing is to cut. And they're looking at a ledger. They're not looking at the community and the people and the impact that it's having on communities on the south and west side. But that's the job of city, local government. They have to look out for the people. So I think the problem begins with in the very beginning, in the honeymoon stage, when the city's being promised by big companies, what the investment that they're bringing to the community, because this happens over and over again. And then secondly, I think you're right. So look at the real issue. Is the issue that they're low performing? Why are they low performing? Is it because of customer service or lack of access? Don't just do the easy thing and shut down and then try to move services away from the communities that need it the most.
Right. Is there a way for the city to, I mean, I get, that having economic development in the community and having business at the community level is important not only for the neighborhood but also for the city. But if it's not there and it's not bringing in a pharmacy is a little bit more challenging. How about educating people about all the options online and expanding online access for people who don't otherwise, because everybody's got a phone now?
I think it's critical. I think the concern for me is one, information distribution. The city struggles with getting information out to the people who need it most. But two, while I think going online is a great option, I also want investment in brick and mortars in our community. And so I'm trying to find a balance of both. I think you have this chicken and egg where a company can come into a community and get an incentive, but when they get that incentive, it's not time bound. It's not, we were agreeing to sign on to this incentive and your commitment is to stay in this community for 10 years, because not performing against what? What is the baseline? Is the baseline what performance looks like in communities with a completely different demographic and a completely different socioeconomic status? Or is the baseline tailored and tiered based on different types of markets? And so I don't believe that the Walgreens were underperforming based on the market they were in. And I think we have a real issue with data and how we set standards. And so if we don't call those questions as government or as communities, you end up being held to a standard you won't be able to keep up with because it's not true of your market.
On the small business side, though, I'll tell you, so small businesses that I've worked with, and I have a question for you, Sufyan, is what they'll say is they want to open, they want to be open, but it's challenging in the city because we put in a lot of very progressive laws that impact a small business owner's, the wage, the increase of the minimum wage, the hours bills, on how long, how people can work, that make it very hard for small business owners, not very hard, but make it harder and not impossible, but make it harder for them to start up and stay open before they really get successful. I mean, are you hearing that? Do you see that? And what are we want to be progressive, we want to support employees, but we also have to remember about employers.
And we want to support local businesses
Right.
too, right? And when these larger retailers come in, they tend to drive out the local businesses. I think economic incentives could be a way for some of these, if we're really invested in our communities and community organizations, how do we not only draw them in and keep them in? And I think it requires a lot of our brain power collectively to think of the best ways to do that. I'm really concerned about, the feeling I get is, I live in the South Loop neighborhood. I have 6 pharmacies within a mile of me.
Right.
I have 10 grocery stores in a mile of me. Sometimes online's a great option, but if I wake up, my kid wakes up with a cold, I need to go out right now and get something.
Right.
And some of these communities where they're deserts don't have that access to food. And stores like pharmacies aren't only doing medicine, but providing household goods and care that families need. So how do we make sure that these communities and members of our most vulnerable communities have that access and taken care of? And I think we just really need to think of creative ways to invest to make sure those needs are
Yeah, I
met.
think we have a few minutes to talk about a major issue that wasn't originally on the list, but has kind of come up as we're moving through January and the new administration. And these are because we've talked a lot here about immigration and the undocumented community. So how are we feeling about these upcoming raids? We think they're going to happen? Do we have any idea how many people we think could be impacted immediately? And I know you're talking about it on your news outlets.
Sure. I mean, there's a sense of fear where people are making decisions about not going to work, not taking their kids to schools. I mean, literally hiding because of this cloud of fear that the Trump administration has created on day one, signing nearly 200 executive orders. And a lot of these the issues is about the problem with immigration, but once again, it's very focused on the most vulnerable, as opposed to really saying, let's press the pause button that I do believe needs to happen. And while you're working and helping with the communities that are already here, that came here legally, asylum seekers came here legally, start to fix the root causes of those problems, which is going to take much more time. It takes harder work. But Donald Trump, as he's done previously, it's all about the image and it's all about the brand. And so what we saw yesterday, him signing these executive orders, that was a photo op. And his continued threats, which he will enact, it's just about the photo op and the images of conflict between the communities. So I think that what the best that we can do right now is something that we talked about, or that you mentioned off camera. It's really just taking a step back. Because right now we can't have a knee-jerk reaction based out of fear. That's when you trip and make mistakes. Mm-hmm. It's a moment of pause, take a step back, start to plan, and expect that this is coming. Because if it's one thing that I've learned about the first term of Trump, he will do what he says. This isn't about just speaking politics. He will do it.
You know, I think we knew in deep blue Illinois and deep blue Chicago that we were going to be a target. So we'll see. We'll have much to talk about in the weeks to come. So I want to thank you all for being here as usual. You were insightful and thoughtful on topics that matter to our viewers. So thank you. We'll be right back with this week's one-on-one, a conversation with Ignite CEO and President Stephanie Piccirilli. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm financial expert Tamara Durbin, inviting you to join me each week for In the Money, the show that makes money management approachable and enjoyable. Join the conversation at 7 p.m. exclusively on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org or on the CAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
A 49-year-old organization that annually serves more than 500 young people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, Ignite works to not only meet the young person's immediate needs, but provide them with an array of comprehensive services needed to succeed with the ultimate goal of preventing adult homelessness. To discuss the critical work that Ignite is doing in service to the city's unhoused youth, I'm joined by the organization's CEO and President, Stephanie Piccirilli. Stephanie, welcome.
So glad to be here.
I'm thrilled to learn more about Ignite. So tell us a little bit about the mission and vision of Ignite.
Sure. So Ignite's vision is really to make sure every young person is defined by their potential and not their circumstances. And we look at every young person who walks in our door, as young as 10, all the way up to 26, for the future that they have in front of them, and to ensure that there's a game plan and there's services and supports and caring adults to help them really live into the future that's meant for them.
And how do young people come to you? How do you find people? I mean, obviously we know there's homeless youth everywhere, but how do they get engaged with Ignite?
So we talk about our front door of Ignite, and it looks a lot of different ways. So we work with young people who come through the Chicago public school system. We work with the Chicago libraries. We work with community centers. We work with churches. We work with neighborhood organizations that are supporting young people. But I think one of the big pieces that we support and lead in our city is street and community outreach. So we have an outreach team that goes out into all of the neighborhoods of Chicago to find young people who are at the greatest risk of harm in our city. And so we'll ride the train, buses, we'll work even with community leaders to identify young people who are struggling and who really need support and a safety net.
Are the numbers going up of young people or down? What's the population look like?
Sure. So homelessness across our country has gone up by 18% in the last year. In Chicago, it's no different. Each year, the federal government and the city and all of the partners in the Chicagoland area do what's called a point-in-time count. And that point-in-time count counts the number of individuals throughout our city and our county that are experiencing housing instability that evening. So last year's point-in-time count for Chicago showed that there were over 2,500 young people under the age of 24 who were experiencing homelessness on that given evening. And we know that's just a fraction of individuals who are experiencing homelessness. That's just individuals we are able to find in that 24-hour time period. And the under 24-year-old population was the highest percent of individuals experiencing homelessness that evening.
Wow.
And that day.
And you covered it, talked about it a little bit, but you have a broad array of services, right? So let's talk a little bit about, once a youth walks through the door, what can they expect?
So whenever a young person walks through our door, our eyes are set on what will this young person's life be when they leave Ignite. And so we approach all of our array of services and supports with that in mind. And while we know that a young person walks through our door with emergency needs, so it can be they need clothing, they need food, they need a safe place to stay during the day or a safe place to go that evening. They can come into our drop-in center, which is located at 47th Street in the historic Rosenwald building between Michigan and Wabash.
I know exactly where it is. It's down the street from the Urban League for many years. I fought hard to get that building, worked hard to get that building renovated.
It is such a treasure. It's such a treasure.
It's wonderful. What a great place for you to be.
It's such a treasure. So young people can come into that facility Monday through Friday from 9 in the morning till 7 at night. And then they can get, as I mentioned, those resources. They can also meet with a case manager. They can meet to get supports around mental health support. They can also work with our staff to get enrolled in the city's coordinated entry system, which is the system that the city uses to make match up individuals with housing that's available on an emergency, a transitional, or even a permanent supportive housing basis. And so we actually can do an assessment right there in our space. And then I think mostly meet with a kind and loving staff that want to help a young person achieve the best in their life and thrive.
Right. Wow, wonderful. So how long have you been at the CEO at Ignite, and what are you thinking about for the future? What's on your vision board, if you will?
Yeah, so I have been sitting in my seat and serving as the CEO for about 4.5 years now. And I've been with Ignite a total of almost 8 years. And we are in year 4 of a 5-year strategic plan. So I'm really excited to what the next 5 years will bring. Next year's our 50th anniversary, which is incredible. Over the last 4 years, our strategic plan was really focused on turning off time clocks for how long a young person can stay in housing. Most housing only lasts 18 to 21 months. And we know a young person needs more than 18 to 21 months to financially be on their own feet and stable. So I think as we go forward, as we continue to invest in our infrastructure as an organization, we'll look at increasing the number of young people we serve, increasing our apartment housing program, which is our most independent, mostly privately funded housing program that gets a young person to taking over a lease of their own apartment.
Nice. Wow, that's pretty cool.
And so that's one of the ultimate goals, and I see that expanding. Awesome. We will be also opening up a drop-in center on the west side of the city.
Right. Oh, okay.
As well.
Great. You got a lot on your plate.
We have a lot going on. We have a lot going on.
If viewers want to learn more about Ignite and the programs and services you have and how they can help people, guide people your way, how do they find that?
So you can visit our website at ignitepromise.org. And what you'll find on that website is how you can engage as maybe an employment partner. We have an employment program and give your time to work with young people and help them find permanent jobs. You can also find ways to give and to donate. We have our annual gala coming up on April 5th, which is a great way to learn more about Ignite and to see our young people, tell their story, because it is their story to tell, not ours.
Stephanie, thank you so much for all you're doing for our young people, and thank you for taking the time to be here at the newsroom today.
Thank
really
you, Andy.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
On the other side of a short break, I'm back with some final thoughts. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. Join me Mondays at 7 p.m. as I sit in conversation with incredible, dynamic, and complex Chicagoans who peel back the layers, living lessons, the joy, and the pain behind their confident smiles. Join the conversation Mondays at 7 p.m. on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19 and streaming on cantv.org and CAN-TV Plus app.
Chicago stands at a critical juncture, grappling with pressing issues such as public safety, economic disparity, and education reform. As the city's challenges grow more complex, so does the need for unified leadership. Mayor Brandon Johnson, with his progressive vision and commitment to equity, has the potential to guide Chicago toward transformative change. However, achieving these goals will require greater collaboration with the City Council and the Illinois State Legislature. Collaboration is not just a strategy, it's a necessity. Chicago's rich diversity of neighborhoods, perspective, and priorities demands a governance approach that brings stakeholders to the table. The City Council, with its mix of veteran leaders and fresh voices, represents the collective will of Chicago's communities. Engaging this body as true partners rather than adversaries will ensure that policies are not only ambitious, but also pragmatic and reflective of the on-the-ground realities. By fostering a spirit of teamwork, Mayor Johnson can transform his administration into a coalition of shared purpose. Equally important is the relationship with the state legislature. Many of Chicago's systemic challenges, such as education funding, public transit infrastructure, and economic revitalization, cannot be addressed in isolation. State-level support is critical to secure the resources and legislative backing needed to implement bold solutions. Collaborative efforts with Governor J.B. Pritzker and legislative leaders can open pathways for Chicago to pilot statewide initiatives, attract investments, and influence broader policies that benefit urban centers. However, collaboration requires more than a few meetings and a couple of handshakes. It demands active listening, mutual respect, and compromise. Disagreements are inevitable, but they must not devolve into gridlock. Mayor Johnson has an opportunity to model leadership that bridges divides, whether ideological, geographic, or generational. By building trust with allies and skeptics alike, he can ensure that progress is not stalled by politics. Chicago's future depends on leadership that prioritizes results over rhetoric. As a city that has long been a beacon of resilience and innovation, Chicago deserves leaders who recognize that collective action is the cornerstone of meaningful change. Mayor Johnson has shown that he has a vision for a better Chicago. Now the challenge is to make that vision a reality, together. For his sake and ours, I hope that the mayor will choose to make true collaboration the legacy of this administration, proving that when Chicago works as one, it can truly thrive. That's our time. Thank you for tuning into Chicago Newsroom 2.0. Until next time, be well and well informed.